Hey everybody, it is Thursday night and I'm going live on Facebook and on Instagram. It is wonderful to see you all. I'm coming live to you
Hey
here
everybody,
from
it is
La
Thursday
Crosse,
night and I'm
Wisconsin.
going live on Facebook and on Instagram.
And I'm coming to you live from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Not quite sure why some of that audio is coming through, but it's great to see you all and have you all joining me live, where we're going to be talking tonight about how to make your dream vacation a reality. I think this is just such an important topic for so many people. Just to give you fair warning, I have been presenting for most of the day. I left my hotel here at about 7:30 this morning, got back here at about 7 p.m., and had a little bit of time to grab some dinner and just chill for a bit before going live. So if my energy is a little low, it's because I've been presenting for 9 hours at a pre-retirement seminar today. But honestly, it was absolutely amazing. I really, really loved it. It's one of my favorite things that I do, so it's way worth it. But you didn't come here to hear me talk about my pre-retirement seminar. You came to hear me talk about how to make your dream vacation possible. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What dream vacation do you have in mind? Please tell me about your dream destinations. Comment, let me know. I'd absolutely love to hear what you're thinking of when you think about your dream vacation. So what is your dream vacation? Stick it in the comments box. I'd love to hear from you. Over the course of the last year, my husband and I were able to go on my dream trip. I'd always dreamed about going to Paris. It was something that I had thought of ever since I was a kid. I'd always wanted to go to France because I've been learning French since I was in kindergarten. Believe it or not, my Catholic school growing up in elementary school actually started teaching French even that young. And so I became addicted to this idea of French culture, of eating croissants and baking and being able to go to museums and just relaxing out by the seaside and in the countryside. All of those things were big dreams for me. I could not wait to make them a reality. And so I went. I went on my dream vacation, but it certainly was not an easy process getting there. It took a lot of work, and I'd love to help you see how you can make that a reality. Hey, Beth, thanks for joining. And I love the idea of going to Sweden. That's super awesome. If you've got your dream vacation listed, I'd love to hear what it is too. Alrighty, so how did I actually make it happen? Here are a couple of tips that I would give to you. The first thing is that your dream vacation is not going to happen overnight. Just know that it's going to take some time to be able to make this possible, but don't give up on it. Don't just put it off and say, I'll never be able to travel to Morocco or to Africa to go on a safari or whatever your dream vacation has to be. Don't just let go of it, but give yourself a little grace. This is going to take some time to be able to build up that income, unless you have a sweet windfall, in which case good for you. But for most of us, it's going to take a little time. So just take some breathing room on that. The next thing that I would say is that travel is not something that happens overnight either. I think a lot of people that I talk to, especially when they hear about the amount that my husband and I travel, they're just like, oh, you must just have extra income, or, you must just be able to make that a possibility because you travel a lot and you just use points. And while we certainly do use points sometimes, one of the biggest things that my husband and I do to make our dream trip and any trip possible is that we make travel a priority in our budget. If you talk to both of us, our biggest hobby is traveling. We are very happy to spend money traveling and do a little bit of less of just about everything else to make that possible. So if you really care about travel and you really care about your dream trip, I encourage you to take a step back and encourage you to just see, what could you give up? What other things might be taking the place of travel that you're mindlessly maybe spending money on? A couple things to consider are, could you reduce your grocery budget a little bit? Could you reduce your utilities? Maybe reorganize some of your bills. Maybe you want to get rid of cable and cut the cord so you can spend a little money on travel. Maybe you're going out with friends all the time and you could invite people to dine in instead. Any little ways that you can cut your budget may have just a small impact on your life, but if it allows you to travel more, it's definitely worth it in my book. Next thing I would encourage you to do is identify the places where you want to splurge. This is your dream trip after all, so you want to make sure that it is a reality in the way that you imagined. There's no sense in going to Paris and not visiting the Eiffel Tower, not being able to take a cooking class, which was the highlight of our experience in France, being able to take a cooking class from a woman in Normandy who taught us in her house. I mean, seriously, I could go on and on about that experience. but it costs extra money to be able to do those things. If this is really your dream trip, identify early on, these are the 3 things that I really want to do. This is what's going to make it a dream trip for me, whether it's something expensive, like going on a safari, or it's something inexpensive. Honestly, one of my big things I wanted to do in Paris more than anything else was to go to a local bakery, get a croissant, and walk down the street. I know, it sounds really stupid, but that is what I'd always dreamed of doing, was getting a croissant from a great bakery and walking down the street and just enjoying the streets of Paris and watching people. So whatever it might happen to be for you, make a list of your splurges, and if you're in a partner relationship, make sure your partner is included in the conversation too. The next thing that I encourage you to do is create a budget, and create a realistic one. One thing that Tyler and I did that was incredibly helpful is we talked to people who had been to France before. We sat down with them, we had conversations, they lent us their guidebooks, and we had the real deal conversation. How much did you spend on hotels? Where did you stay so that you felt safe? All of those different things so that we could make a realistic budget that actually reflected the reality of the trip. So again, creating the budget. I know it doesn't sound really fun, but it's incredibly important. The next thing I would tell you to do is give yourself a little breathing room. Let's say you've identified your budget. You need $4,000 for you and your partner to go on this dream trip. Give yourself a little space. Make sure you build in for those extra things. This is probably a place that you may not be able to go to more than once. So how are you going to make the most of your time there? Great if you're able to go again, but just in case you're not, how do you make sure you take advantage of those spur of the moment things that will really make this trip come alive for you? Build in a couple $100 extra. I know that means you might have to put off your trip for another couple months just to build up that money, but believe me, you'll be so happy you have that cash reserve. I remember when my husband and I went to Iceland for the first time, we hadn't really set aside any money for spending money. We just brought money for food. We brought money for our rental car and our flight, and we thought that was enough. And then we started shopping on the streets of Iceland and Reykjavik. And I know it sounds really odd, but if you've been to Iceland, you'll probably understand they have amazing stuff there, amazing stuff. We bought all of our Christmas gifts for the year there, and we both decided we wanted to have wool sweaters because where better to get it than in Iceland? And we spent a lot of money. And to be honest, we were digging ourselves out of that hole for a while. We borrowed from savings. I'm pretty embarrassed to say that. And it really taught me the hard way that it's so important to build up that extra reserve so that it's possible to make that trip happen. Next, I encourage you to do your research in advance. Take a look at when the off season is, see if that's when you'd like to go. Take a look at the deals that you might be able to take advantage of. You can start researching this years in advance. Know that things might shift a little bit over time. Watch things like Google Flights to see when some of those cheap times are to buy flights. See when the best times are to go where you can get a good deal but still enjoy your trip. The more research you do, the better. It's going to leave you feeling equipped for where you want to spend, where you want to splurge, and how to get those great deals. And the last thing that I would say to you is zero in. Focus in on this trip as being your number one goal. Now, of course, you might have other financial goals in your life that you're taking care of in terms of paying off debt, getting that emergency fund setting up, paying for retirement, all of that. But when you think about discretionary spending, really zero in on this trip and say, hey, mom and dad, this is what I want to have for my birthday and for Christmas for the next 2 years. I'd love to have you pay for part of this trip and just give us money towards this great adventure. We did that last year in terms of our Christmas and birthday gifts and the year prior. It was so helpful. Plus, when we got back from our trip, everyone was so excited to hear about it because they had invested in that dream. They felt like they were a part of that trip too, which is so exciting. I love being able to share or travel with family, especially because many of them aren't able to get to the places that we're able to go. All right, so that's what I've got on my list. Hopefully you appreciate those quick tips for making your travel a reality. I'd love to hear any questions that you have. If you're on Facebook, feel free to populate your questions, commenting on the post. If you're on Instagram, I invite you to DM me. I'd love any questions you have to make your dream trip a reality. And if you need a helping hand in planning out this trip and making sure that it makes sense, I have a big goal strategy session that you can do with me that absolutely love to invite you to. During the strategy session, we'll plan out exactly what this trip is going to look like, and we'll plan out ways for you to fund that trip. So if you're a little nervous about how you're going to make it a priority and where you're going to come up with the extra money, I can help you make that plan. I invite you to check out that big goal strategy session on my website, gracepomeroy.com, GracePomroy.com. And that's all I've got today. Feel free to submit your questions, my friends. I'd love to answer them. It's one of my absolute favorite topics of travel. Hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic evening. Goodbye here from La Crosse. I'm so excited to just be able to relax and let go. See you later.